Hello, I'm Michael Cantrell, and you are listening to the Prison Officer Podcast, a place to have a conversation about the forgotten cops that work in this country's jails, prisons, and correctional centers. A place for me to try to make sense of a career spent working inside the fence with some of the greatest people that nobody sees or recognizes for the important job they do to keep this world safe. If you love this podcast, hit the follow button, or better yet, share with your family, friends, or coworkers. Hello and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. Before we get to our topic today, I just want to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. Innovation has always been the key to success of Pepperball, and the Pepperball Blast is just one more way to deliver a payload that will distract, disorient, or incapacitate an inmate. This lightweight, refillable delivery system is perfect for carrying in a holster, in your pocket, or just holding in your hand as part of a cell entry team or a CERT team. Each reloadable blast cartridge contains up to 3 projectiles worth of PAVA powder. When the quick flip safety is turned and depressed, the PAVA powder is pushed out of the tube by a 1.8 gram nitrogen cartridge. This will quickly cover the inmate and saturate the cell. Since there's no actual projectiles deployed upon firing, this is a truly non-lethal product with no impact. To learn more about Pepperball, go to www.pepperball.com or click on the show notes today for more information. Pepperball is the safer option first. Well, hello and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. My name's Mike Cantrell, and today I've got Major Shaun Klucznik with me. He currently serves as the Judicial Services Bureau Commander and Jail Administrator at the Hernando County Sheriff's Office in Florida. He's been working in the criminal justice field since 1997, holds dual certification in both corrections and law enforcement. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy, Session 283, American Jail Association National Jail Leadership Command Academy, Class number 10, serves as the Commissioner of the Florida Corrections Accreditation Commission, is a certified jail manager through the AJA. Major Klucznik holds an Associate of Science degree in Criminal Justice from St. Petersburg College, a Bachelor of Arts degree from St. Leo University, a Master of Arts in Philosophy from St. John Vianney College Seminary, maybe you can correct me on that, and a Graduate Certificate in Criminal Justice Education from the University of Virginia. And most recently, he was sworn in as the 45th President of the American Jail Association. I am super happy to have him on here. Once again, he's someone that I've been following and reached out to on LinkedIn. I know he's a student of leadership, and I want to talk about some of that stuff. And welcome to the Prison Officer Podcast, Shaun. So, like you, if you've listened to this podcast before, you know I like to see how people got here and how we got into corrections and what formulated our lives. So where'd you grow up at?
Children, there's some propaganda back there, some New England Patriots propaganda. So I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and we actually, believe it or not, my family owned a restaurant in Foxborough just before the Patriots got good. They were really terrible. We owned a restaurant just south of the stadium before they knocked it down and made it a parking lot and built a new stadium. And but my dad said, "Listen, if we're going to be poor, we're going to be warm," because we lost our building, and we moved to Florida when I was 12 years old. And it's been a love affair with the heat since then. Yeah. I know I went to high school down here, and I believe it or not, I was working a job as a kid, 18 years old, roughly 18. Just graduated high school, and I saw one of my former coworkers walk in the store where we used to work together, and she was wearing a deputy uniform. And I'm like, "What happened here?" Karen was a cashier, and now she's walking in. She looks like a cop. Let me go see what's going on. So I walked over and talked to Karen, and she was telling me that at the time, the Pasco County Sheriff's Office in Florida was just opened a very large jail, and they were staffing it quickly. And she had got hired and sponsored through an academy, and she was working as a correctional officer. So I said, "Let me find out how to do that." So I thought it was cool. I just thought the uniform was cool at first. So I filled out the application, turned it in, and 6 months later, went through the hiring process and got hired on as a corrections cadet. Went to the academy in a little place called Gower's Corner, Florida. It was my academy size was a whopping 16. We were sponsored, and I was excited by the rate of pay at the time was $5.60 an hour or something like that. And when we graduated, we jumped up to $10.77 an hour, and I thought I was rolling in it. This is 1997. I had a great start to my career at Pasco County. Did some cool stuff. I got to be an FTO pretty quick. I was an FTO about a year after I got off probation. I went to the crossover at that point, and the only reason I went to the crossover, honestly, was crossover to Law Enforcement Academy was just to prevent myself from being privatized. We had two jails really close to Pasco County, one to the immediate north, Hernando County, and one to the north of that, Citrus County, that were run by CCA. And I didn't want to, the threat was always there at budget time. We're just going to privatize the jail and not worry about trying to add staff or add funding. We'll just privatize. That was a big threat.
Sure.
Thankfully for me, that never happened. But I was an FTO, and then I loved being, and I'll admit this, the only reason I became a training officer is because I liked the chevron on the sleeve at first, and I thought it looked good. So I went into FTO school and then realized I loved training. I actually loved, that was your first foray into leadership. You're responsible for one staff member at least. Before we were responsible for anywhere from 48 to at times 110 inmates at a time.
Yeah. But
having a new person who's interested in the profession and doesn't have any bad habits, especially the ones that are straight out of the academy, those are by far the best to teach. But I loved being an FTO. In 2004, I became a corporal. I was appointed to the rank of corporal, and in 2007, I was appointed to the rank of sergeant. Promoted to the rank of sergeant, and that was by far my second favorite rank. Sergeant was fun because you get to do that training, you get to do that mentoring, and you get to develop your squad the way you see fit. And had some great times as a sergeant in Pasco. And then in 2010, we had, I think the whole country experienced the economic downfall of the mortgage industry.
Yep.
And the Hernando County was still privatized, was still CCA was running up there, and the county was strapped for cash. So they asked the sheriff at the time up there to take a look at the jail to see if he could run it cheaper than CCA, because no matter what was going on, CCA never missed a contractual increase, and there was no, I know you guys are hurting, so let's back off the contract a little bit. So the sheriff went up there and took a look and realized the building was in real bad shape. 2010. So the sheriff was considering it, but he actually was quoted in the newspaper saying the jail's a piece of junk. I'm not interested. Well, at that point, the private vendor saw an opportunity, I guess, to ask for a raise in a time where we couldn't afford a raise as a state, as a country, and they pulled plug. So the sheriff was asked again if he'd do it. At the time, it was Sheriff Nugent, who became Congressman Nugent. He agreed to it. So then they hired a jail administrator, and then they hired me next. I came on as the only lieutenant from Pasco. I was told I was going to be promoted to Pasco and to lieutenant in Pasco County 3 months from then, or I could be promoted to lieutenant in Hernando County, within 2 days.
Was part of that because you'd done so much training that they wanted you in place to do a lot of this changeover and training and stuff? Or what do you think the reason was that they were reaching out to you?
Well, believe it or not,
because you were on the street at this time, right?
No, I was still working in the jail. In
you were back in the jail. Okay,
I never went to the law enforcement side until Hernando. So I was dual certified the whole time in the jail, but I was never allowed to go out to patrol. Luckily in Hernando, things changed a little bit.
Okay.
The jail administrator they hired was somebody that I used to work for in Pasco County. So they brought him back off the couch. He was retired, and he came back in and decided to take it off. And he asked some of his former coworkers, who should I bring up here as lieutenant? And I guess that was the first name they offered up. Hurt my feelings a little bit. I'm hoping Brian had to watch this video in this podcast, because when he called me up and asked me if I would consider going to Hernando County, leaving Pasco County, he was my major at the time. He was my professional mentor, and he basically kicked me out of the nest. He saw an opportunity for me to actually have a once in a lifetime or once in a career opportunity to take a jail over from a private vendor. And so I went up and met with the time was Major Mike Page, and he gave me the hey, I need a lieutenant. Are you interested? That was my interview. So how much time do I have? He says, I can give you 15 or 20 minutes. So I called my stepdad at the time, and he was a retired NYPD, passed away since then, but he was retired. And I said, hey, Tony, what do you think I should do? He goes, you should go. The rest is history. So 2010, we were part of a transition team. We hired 130 correctional professionals from control room operators to deputies and we were appointing people into ranks, into corporal, sergeant. We hired a whole medical unit. We run our own medical unit. We run our own kitchen. So we hired it all in, and we did all that with full background checks, and we did that in just under 90 days. So to hire 130 people in under 90 days with full background checks is pretty impressive.
Yeah. How much of an academy were you putting them through?
We didn't. So believe it or not, the only person that we hired that had no experience was one, and he's one of my two lieutenants now. Javier De Jesus has been a rock star, and he was the only one that came in with no experience, but he picked it up pretty well. And he never actually had an FTO program.
Okay.
Everybody we hired is already Florida certified. They came from either the Florida Department of Corrections. We did pull a few people from Pasco County, all over the state of Florida, and we made our own team in 2010, and since then it's been 15 years. And it's been an absolute blessing. 2010, what day was that? 2017, I got appointed to the rank of captain. The sheriff gave me an opportunity to become the jail captain. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of when I had the opportunity. When I was a lieutenant, I went to HR for 4 months. That was the sheriff gave me my first chance outside of the jail. I was the interim human resources director, where I probably learned the most in my career in those 4 months. To being in charge of human resources. Transferred back to the jail.
Helped you as a supervisor too later on, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I transferred back to the jail and then had an opportunity to go over to special operations, where they allowed me to kind of just basically dabble where I couldn't get in trouble with my law enforcement certification. So at the time I was in charge of animal enforcement and some of the specialty units, the SWAT team, and aviation and marine, those kind of things that were pretty fun to be around, and then cool, great staff to learn from. From there, I got promoted to captain, went back to the jail for a couple years, and then my major at the time, when Major Page retired, the sheriff brought over a couple majors from the law enforcement side. I got to train two majors. So one of them was there for a year, and then they switched out and went back to the patrol side, and the other one came over. Great guys, and one of them became the chief deputy, and actually the other one became the chief of police at a local police department. So it was pretty cool. And when they left, I had the opportunity, the sheriff on my birthday in 2020 took me to lunch and asked me if I was interested in being the jail administrator. And at the rank of major, I said, absolutely. He said, you sure you're ready? I said, I've been ready, boss. And, the most professional, polite, not condescending way, because that was my goal, was to develop myself into that, to be ready when the time came.
Right.
What an opportunity it's been. And so it's been just over 5 years since then. Been able to do some really cool stuff because I have really amazing people. You mentioned in the intro that I'm a Florida Corrections Accreditation, one of the commissioners on that commission.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 3 weeks ago, I was sworn in as the 45th President of the American Jail Association, which should be the pinnacle of your career, right? Should be the absolute peak. But I hope to have at least 10 years ago. This year is going to be very interesting, very busy. It's been, a busy 3 weeks, and I'm just looking forward to what's next.
Absolutely. So, how big is Hernando County now? How many staff, how many inmates are you working with there?
So we have, for county inmates only, we have about 480.
Okay.
Now, when we took over, oddly enough, 15 years ago, we took over, the first count cleared at 602. And now I have down to 480. COVID really dropped. It's spiked back up, but we've been hovering right 120 less than that day one. But we also house prisoners for the U.S. Marshal Service, and then we actually hold inmates for Pasco County because they're out of that space. They got new construction going on. So we house about 200 paying customers. We say it that way, and so I'm sitting at just 650 or so. It's design capacity. The building's 812. We know that design capacity doesn't mean anything when classification gets involved. operationally 748 is comfortable. And then the county, we're just over 200,000 people. So as a county, staff-wise, I have roughly 150, 160 staff, and that's sworn, civilian, medical, everybody together.
Okay. So just inform me, in the state of Florida, when you say sworn, they're sworn deputies, and then they work in corrections. So they go through the same academy as somebody that works on the street?
No, there's two different academies. Actually, technically, three different academies. There's a law enforcement academy, corrections academy, and that's probation academy. And the corrections academy is about 3.5 months, and it's good training.
Wow.
The law enforcement academy is a little bit longer than that, just over 6 months. But it's
nice.
It's better than a lot of states don't even have a base recruit academy. So we're definitely way ahead of them.
Sure. So is there a CTO, FTO program when they come back from the academy also?
Yeah, we have a 3-phase San Jose model FTO program.
Okay.
We do 4 weeks, and then the 2-week third phase, final phase. But that's 12-hour shifts. It's really 2 weeks, and 1 full week of work. But it's worked for us. Believe it or not, my trainers have always been awesome. My FTOs have been awesome. We've only really ever remediated anybody 3-4 times in 15 years. They really take it serious. We obviously, as a trainer, you're training your partner, you're training your backup, you're training that person you're going to be relieving, and you want to make sure they're doing the job right. So when you get there, you're not having to control chaos or get everybody back in business. But our FTOs are great, and our sergeants and the middle management, especially right now, my middle managers are amazing.
Yeah. So I just had this discussion a couple of weeks ago about CTOs or FTOs, and they are one of the most important positions that you can have, because they not only give these people the start and the knowledge and everything that they need to become a correctional officer, but those people truly set the culture inside your agency, don't they?
Absolutely. They can set it and they can ruin it if you're not careful. I mean,
they absolutely.
Your training, your line trainers to CTO, FTO, or in your training unit in general can really set the tone. They really spend the most one-on-one time with anybody. Even if it's just a week of in-service or a day here and there at in-service, you have a lot of influence when you're in front of a room and you're making off-color comments about the agency, or maybe talk about the command staff. And that's there's no place for that. You got to own your life and own your position no matter what. And if you're complaining about it, you're not trying to fix it. So it's important to own your spot and lead no matter what.
Right. That's actually how I became a lieutenant. I was griping. I was a GS8, walked in the lieutenant's office. I could still picture it. He looked up over his glasses. He was typing. And he goes, "Are you on the lieutenant's roster?" I said, "No." He said, "Then shut up and get out of here. Exactly. If you're not going to help fix it, I don't want to hear it." So,
I mean, in all reality, every position, even if you don't want to move up, every position is a position of leadership, right? But sergeants have a huge influence on at least their squad, and shift lieutenants typically have a huge influence on their shift. So they set the tone. They set typically the demeanor, especially those night shift lieutenants who get the new people. Right? You got to be careful about how you assign those and make sure they're not being cultivated into a negative situation. But that takes time, especially if you're inheriting a culture that's challenging. I mean, you've seen some of the things going on across the country. I couldn't imagine trying to set up shop in certain places. But I mean, leadership and relationships work, right? So if you know your people and you're willing to take the bull by the horns and kind of, toe the line. I'm not backing off this. These are the standards we're going to adhere to. People need to be led. Let's put it that way. We want to be, right? I joke around, talk about the inmate population, but even your staff and even your kids, just the Cesar Millan rule, the dog whisperer. They need rules, boundaries, and limitations, right? They start doing something that you don't want them to do. You gotta fix it. I mean, obviously, course correcting is not. No, you can't do it like with a dog. You can't just yoke on the leash a little bit and tighten them up. But some days you probably want to, but it doesn't work that way.
Right.
But, we all need that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you see it in corrections, because corrections as a position is a leader, whether it's just inmates or whether it's your peers, coworkers. But you look outside of corrections, and our officers, when they go out in the community, they're running T-ball coaches, they're running the Sunday school Bible study, they're doing all these things in the community, and the reason is because they're such good leaders. Not everybody leads at our level.
No, you're right. And you know, what kind of job do you typically have where you have a captive audience and you get to practice public speaking almost daily, right? So you're used to managing crowds and recognizing when something's off a little bit. You know, you've gotten to the point where you walk into a housing unit, you know something just went wrong. Either something just happened or something's about to happen. And you can usually tell the difference pretty quickly.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Every position, like you said it just right. I used to coach T-ball. I used to coach, youth league baseball, and I loved it. Actually, my nephew's just here, and when he gets old enough, I plan on doing it again. But it is you're part of the community, and my sheriff says it all the time. He goes, he wishes people could see the inside of what happens in a jail every day, because you don't know. The only time people pay attention to a jail or a prison is something bad happens, right?
Yeah.
Somehow it gets some news, or all of a sudden there's a perimeter and somebody's looking for somebody, and that's a bad day. But there's so much good stuff that happens inside our jails and prisons all across the country every single day that the public just doesn't get to know about. So sometimes we got to be our best advocates, our own best advocates, and share that information. That's part of the reason I'm here today, to talk about, we are professionals, and the profession is a legitimate profession. I remember when I was probably 23, 24 years old, and I was visiting my aunt in Massachusetts. And back then I called her an aunt, but now it's aunt. But she's like, so when are you going to be done with the jail? When are you going to go to the law enforcement side? I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, it's just a stepping stone. I said, nothing about what I'm doing is a stepping stone. We're controlling chaotic places, and most of the time, most places probably make it look easy. We do a good job. I think we professionalize this profession so well that the training is. I mean, there's always place for improvement. There's always room for improvement. But
absolutely,
it's something that I'm passionate about pretty early, and there's no place I'd rather be. This is it.
Yeah. And I don't think I heard that when I started 30 years ago as much, but I am hearing more and more of the officers I talk to, no, this is my career. This wasn't, because 30 years ago, I do feel like a lot of people thought it was a stepping stone. But I think now there's a lot of people that do look at it as a career. And there's wow. I mean, you can go any direction in corrections. Where do you want to live in the U.S.? Where do you want to live in the world?
Absolutely.
And you could be a correctional officer.
That's the best part. So my father-in-law, I married into a great family. My father-in-law, Phil Wood, was a lieutenant for the Hernando County Sheriff's Office. He retired before I got to work there. I met his daughter. She worked records. I met his wife. She was the director of IT. So it's a family business. But he worked in the jail back when it was the small jail in downtown Brooksville, and he swore by former correctional officers. Anybody who worked in a jail or prison came to the street, they had that gift of gab. They were able to talk themselves out of a lot of scenarios and a lot of situations, because you don't run into the housing unit typically with a bat belt. You don't have a firearm. You're not wearing a baton typically. I mean, most pepper spray and a set of handcuffs most of the time, and he raves about that, and all the way to what we're doing now. We started about 2 years ago. We finally, believe it or not, the state of Florida lowered the lowest age to start as a correctional officer to 18. They did that to benefit the Department of Corrections, because their staffing was so low. They were trying to just add bodies. So we took advantage of it. So we started hiring people right out of high school, training them the way we want to train them, put them through the Corrections Academy. Give us 2.5 years, 3 years. If you want to go to the law enforcement side, we will put you through the crossover academy, pay you to go, and then transfer you to patrol. And quite often, the former detention deputies, the former COs that go to the patrol side, they flourish. They do a good job. They don't, pressure's not a big thing when you're surrounded by, 100 felons, and compare that to talking to one suspect in a room or clearing a scene. It's something that's should be more taken advantage of. I think, California, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department is who I kind of saw that model, where they put them through the jail first. I mean, they come out of the academy, they're basically peace officers, dual certified, we call it in Florida, and go to to the jail, and if you want to go to patrol, then you transfer out. And if you want to promote, you go back into the jail, learn how to be a supervisor, and then go back out to the law enforcement side. We haven't gone that far, but the models work so far. We're doing pretty well. We've had a lot of success, and what I'm happy about is some of those detention deputies are like, nope, this is right where I want to be. I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I thought, could run into a staffing issue for us, but luckily for us, we are probably right at 100% staffed. To be honest, actually throughout the entire agency, we're doing pretty well. So it's a blessing right now.
Nice. Yeah. I'm going to butcher this paraphrase, but somewhere in the art of war, it says something about in the midst of chaos, there is always opportunity. And I think that's another reason why correctional officers turn into such good employees later on, is because how often does the normal person have the opportunity to test their leadership, to test their decision-making skills, to test their communication skills? Whereas in corrections, like you were saying earlier, that's every day.
Every single day.
Yeah.
All the way down to getting the population to comply with getting their bunks made and lining up straight for chow. Right? It's easier to let it get loose. It's a lot easier as a person. Why should I deal with that? Especially, we've all relieved that officer that we were like, oh no, we're taking this post over. This place is going to be chaos. It's going to be a mess, right?
Yeah.
And, you hope for when you walk into a housing unit and the inmates are saying, oh no, it's Klucznik, right? Because I've never been abusive. Absolutely not. Never been disrespectful, but toed the line. I knew that inmate handbook better than any of the inmates ever did. So, and I enforced it and consistently enforced it. So the consistency is the key. And I think that's where you develop as a CO to flourish anywhere you go, because you're going to be consistently disciplined into doing the right thing, no matter what. Even if it's pain in the rear, when you're relieving that one officer that you don't want to relieve, but you got to straighten that unit out. It's going to take a couple hours, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. So let me, because you have worked your way up and you see another side of corrections in jail, and I want to talk about that because you're a member of the Florida Corrections Commission. And of course, now you're a president of the American Jail Association. So from that larger strategic look, what are some of the things that you're looking at now that we can improve, that we're moving forward with? What's some of those challenges that are out there in front of you at that level?
So I still think, let's put it on a national level. I think one of the biggest things we can work on is still continue that professionalization of the profession. Hard to say. It seems like it's even harder to do. I think one of the things I want to work on this year with the American Jail Association is try to develop a sort of like a one-size-fits-all, at least very basic corrections academy curriculum of some sort that jurisdictions that don't have them could take a look at them and use them and try to develop their own things. We have so many good trainers, amazing trainers in Jail Association that I would highly encourage them to reach out to anybody, even on the board of directors or staff. We'd be able to point anybody out in the right direction. I think establishing those minimum standards too. We just watched the situation in New Orleans still unfolding, still 2 escapees out there. But,
sure.
Louisiana doesn't have minimum jail standards. I believe it's something like 24 states don't still.
Right.
The numbers are guessed, so don't quote me there. But I know having the Florida model jail standards to follow is just such a great guideline. Just for there are times where sheriffs get elected and they don't always hire or have somebody that they know from the jail, so they want to put somebody they trust as a jail administrator. Well, what better way than have a good set of policies and model jail standards to follow to run your jail will help you get out of or stay out of so much hot water. But I think at the same time, nationally, just recognizing correctional officers as first responders. We are absolute first responders. The first group of people to respond to a suicide attempt is a CO. If there's a fire in a prison or a jail, the correctional officers are responding to those fires first. We're responding to ODs. There are times we're responding to, and especially hopefully in a jail setting more than a prison, but we're responding to, pregnant inmates starting to give birth, going to labor. We're responding anything like that, heart attacks, any of that stuff. So we are the first to respond. Of course, we're going to call paramedics. We're going to call the fire department, but we're the first ones in there. And there are plenty of places that don't recognize correctional officers as first responders or just at the same level as a firefighter or a police officer. We're going in there serving and maintaining that security as best we can every single day. There are days where you're short-staffed, or remember 3 years or a few years ago when we were for 3 years we were surrounded by COVID no matter what, and all that doom and gloom, being stuck in the buildings. My people wanted to come to work more then than they wanted to serve. They recognized that scenario, and they wanted to make sure that they were not part of the problem, and they wanted to be there. And I remember some of my guys would get COVID. I'm trying to get cleared as fast as possible, and I would don't get cleared when you're healthy and ready to come back. That's what I'm worried about.
Right.
So, but on a national level, if we can get some, even just resolutions from the legislators to say, correctional officers, we got a week a year in May, right? Ronald Reagan nailed that in 1984, and I think we could benefit the profession more if we just recognize the great work they do behind the walls every single day.
So how do we? Because, and you mentioned this, we get noticed when somebody leaves the jail. We get noticed when use of force goes bad. But I can name a couple of dozen times in my career that I know an officer saved a life. And if we were outside the walls, it'd be front page of the newspaper. But you've never heard about it. You never will. How do we get that out there? How do we bring about, we're so secretive. And that comes from the way we used to be. We didn't want people looking at our jails. They were a very private thing. I don't know if because they didn't want them to see what was going on or what, but we're no longer that way. How do we open it up? How do we bring people in? And I mean more than just shows like Jail for 60 days or whatever that one is, that they almost make fun of what we do.
Some of those
shows,
any
thoughts on?
Yeah, some of those shows are beneficial. Especially the booking stuff. The booking is, I think they do a good job of not, making us, the days of the knuckle dragging cage kickers are over, right?
Right.
We are absolute uniformed professionals, and I think what we need to do is we need to sell ourselves. So I have the absolute blessing right now of working for an agency that has about 180,000 followers on our Facebook page. So every time we do something well, somebody gets a certification, we pass an inspection, all the way down to somebody drops off food to share with the staff. We post it. We do it all as much as we can. Our Citizens Academy there's a jail day that includes the history, the background of and how we operate, and then a huge tour. We have to own our message. We have to be able to tell our story. And I know, even all the way down to when we have a GED graduation, we make sure the sheriff comes over. He's master of ceremonies, basically. We always invite a county commissioner to come, and typically they show up and they come and enjoy that too. So, wins for inmates are wins for us too, right? So if we're vast majority of the people we work around every single day that live there are going to return to your community one way or another. And if we can return a better person to society, a more well-trained, our GED program, the recidivism rate, at least in our own county, is so low. It's not even funny. I can't tell you if they've recidivated somewhere else, but the same people that get their GED in my building, they don't come back. So, that says something. I think we have to own our message. Social media, every time we can get on a media outlet of some sort, a podcast like this, anytime from jail association perspective, we often and always need people to write for our magazine. So if you're an expert in something and you want to share your expertise, we are always looking for content for our magazine. So, and we have a great staff. Madison does a fantastic job at headquarters. And I know if they, want to submit something, she'll help, to do the edits for you, make suggestions. And she's maybe a better writer. I know that.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
But we have to own our own message, and we have to continue to push the narrative that we have to work on ourselves and just get better. And we have to own our mistakes. I agree with you. Hiding behind the wall and not telling what's going on in there is challenging. Obviously, you don't want to ever mess up a criminal investigation or something like that, or upset necessarily potential or victims of people. You want to be careful about it, but we have to own the narrative. And sometimes, sunlight's the best disinfectant. And there are times where, telling the full story and showing the pictures and sometimes showing the video. Yeah. Here's what we did here. This was bad. This is what we learned. Here's how we're going to fix it. If you come out and say, hey, we screwed up, it's better than hiding it for years and years and years until the judge orders it released.
Absolutely.
So just get ahead of it. You got to control you got to control the narrative. You got to control your own message.
I know the AJA does some of this already, but I would also love to see judges, congressmen, senators. I want to see them come through more. And it blows my mind because I know jails that haven't seen a judge walk through in forever. And how can you seriously sentence somebody to jail or prison if you haven't seen where it's at? And I would love to open it up like that more and have those people come through more, because they're the ones that have the money. They're the ones that put out the resources. Tennessee's a great example. Do you know about TCI? I'm sure.
Yep.
Over there, Tennessee Correctional Institute. Yep. A lot of that money comes from the legislature, and there not very many states do that. And that money goes out to the jails for training and improves all of them. So I would love to see our politicians involved in this more. They've got to be involved in it more. It's a huge part of our country.
So in the state of Florida, by statute, prisons, legislators, anybody from the executive branch of the state government, judges at any time can just walk into a prison and they really can't stop them. We don't have that standard at the jail, but if a judge or a local congressman or somebody wants to walk around, we're going to show them in. Come on in. My sheriff offers it all the time. If you're, you want to just see the inside of the jail just because you're nosy, perfect. Let's go. And
right.
It's funny. Sergeant Brad Cleto is my administrative sergeant right now, and he did a presentation for the county. Kind of has like a citizens academy for their staff, and it's they just show you all the different parts of the local government. Well, in Florida, the sheriff is an independent constitutional officer, so when but the county is ultimately responsible for the jail. So and they recognize that the sheriff's running it for their benefit. But they came and did the tour, and Brad pointed out before the tour started, he said, just so you know, we operate 24/7 here. He says, we are 95% inspection ready at all times. But when you see the place clean and you don't smell anything, it's because we do that every day. We didn't clean up because you're here. So you got to, operate that way. But having that level of openness and the ability to, if a citizen legitimately wants to walk into a tour, we'll do it. I'll do it 24 hours a day. I have staff there 24 hours a day. Somebody can peel off and do a tour real quick. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I visited a federal prison last week. They invited me up there for Correctional Workers Week, and we started taking the tour, and we hadn't been, I don't know, a couple of 100 feet inside, and somebody was like, well, let me show you this over here. We do a real great. I said, I already figured out you do a real great job. I said, I've been around this a long time. I can walk in immediately and look at the corners and look at the inmates. And the inmates were not scared of the staff. They were all engaging. They were interested. And these were inmates who are talked to, communicated with on a regular basis. And I knew that the minute I walked through the door. So we don't have any reason to hide it. We do a great job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the other things we could focus on too, speaking of not hiding, is part of being on the accreditation commission in Florida is we're accredited, and next week actually we're getting our 4th reaccreditation for FCAC. I'm on the commission, so I'll have to recuse myself for that one. But it's going to be an awesome opportunity. In 3 years from now, we're going to go to what's called Excelsior status for FCAC, which is it takes time to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I have assessors in the building, we have Florida Model Jail Standards, which requires a scheduled audit or inspection every year, and then there's a 120-day window post or previous to that scheduled inspection. They can have unannounced. So we're expecting it unannounced any day of the week. But when the assessors are in the building, my staff don't run for them. They you walking through the hallways, everybody's office door isn't closed, trying to avoid the assessors or the audit team. They want to engage. They know their job. They love their job. They're proud of their job, and they want to tell the story, and they're prepared. Of course, when our FCAC inspection comes around, do we send out the reminders? And hey, if you hypothetically a question comes up, you don't know the answer, it's okay. Find the answer and find that assessor and go tell them you found the answer. Here you go. But when you have the culture of doing the right thing no matter what, and then being inspection ready at all times, there's no reason to avoid telling your story. Yeah. So, that's how we get some great ideas anyway. Sometimes your assessors come through your building and they steal one of your programs, or they steal the way you're doing things. And as you get involved personally as an assessor or an accrediting body inspector, then you go get to steal some stuff too, because everybody's doing good things.
Yeah.
You're not going to voluntarily do extra accreditation if you're not doing the right thing. You're going to meet the minimum standards. And that's what scares me about what I said earlier. Sometimes the minimum standards aren't even there because you don't know what they are. So, but we just have to own the narrative. And that takes training, and that takes the culture of it's okay to make a mistake. You're not going to have your head lopped off if you make a mistake. Be honest about it. But we're much better off when we're telling our story and then showing the world what we're doing to the best of our ability. Obviously, you're not going to have news crews running around with live feed from the jail. You want to control that to somewhat because you have to make sure people have dignity too, meaning the people that live there. And you got to treat them like professionals at all times. But if we can tell good stories and just get ahead of the bad ones, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah. So I think you caught my eye on LinkedIn because we think a lot alike. I know your some of your leadership thoughts you put out on LinkedIn, and one of them I saw pretty early on. I think you just posted the word "good," and so if you've ever listened to Jocko's, is that where you?
Oh
yeah. Instead of making excuses, let's figure out how we can move forward. So I know you study this leadership. What's if you're going to give, this, let's start off with a recruit. If you're going to start off with a new officer coming into work at a jail, what's some of that information and advice you want to give them?
So this is going on right now, as a matter of fact. One of my patrol captains, his son came to work for me.
Nice.
Gavin's a good kid. And he met with me before he applied to go to the law enforcement training, the cadet path. And I said, why don't you come to the jail first and learn how to talk to people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then John and I, Captain McMurdo and I are pretty good friends. And he brought him over and we had a good conversation. The first thing I did was hand him the Jocko and Leif's book, Extreme Ownership.
Absolutely.
And I said, read this. This is going to become your manhood Bible. When you are able to own everything in your life, realize that you're the cause of most of it. And you're the only one that can control your own emotions is you. Your reactions to your emotions is you. And truly, and it all comes down to leadership, right? Every day we're leading ourselves. And that's exactly what that book talks about. And I hadn't heard back from Gavin. And I can't wait to point this out to him. And I sent him an email. Hey, how's the book going? And he admitted right away. He admitted, I haven't had a chance to get to it yet. I'll get started. And then I said, all right, I'm expecting some response. And a couple of weeks later, he responded, I started the book. Here's what's going on, the first 3 paragraphs. And he or not paragraphs, but chapters. And,
right.
He's figuring it out pretty quick. In our roll call room, we use the mantra up there. It's no bad teams, only bad leaders, right? So we have that right on the wall, and it's also it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate.
Absolutely.
You can have the gift of gab. You can talk about the things that you would ideally like to have in an organization, but until you can back it up and prove that you're doing that, you have nothing. So I take advantage of those. There's some phenomenal books out there, and especially when it comes to leadership books, there's so many different ways to look at leadership, but they're truly all telling the same story. It's just a matter of how you like to ingest it, right? So
sure.
I was never in the military. I started this job when I was 19 years old, so I enjoy the paramilitary lifestyle, so the military books resonate with me, and those guys at Echelon Front, they do a great job. Those books are absolutely amazing. I had the opportunity a few years ago. My wife bought me for Father's Day. I got to go to one of their roll call sessions in Dallas.
Oh, did you really? Tell me about that.
Oh, it was awesome. I remember I was back up to a whopping 260 pounds. My all-time high weight was 302. Not proud of that. But after the FBI NA, I got down to 210. Now I'm sitting at like 230. But I had to get down because I knew that I was going to have the full experience. And I knew they were going to do the PT in the morning. And I didn't want to miss it. So I did. And I went to Texas, and we got up and down. We were in the parking lot at 4:30 in the morning. That's where I got to meet Jocko. And I got an autographed picture of him and I fist bumping. It's framed on my office. And what a great group of people, though. Those guys are so down to earth. Their stories are amazing. Their leadership style is amazing. And that it was only a day and a half seminar, basically. But it echoed exactly what you read in the books. And it was cost effective. It wasn't too expensive. And it was just an opportunity and I'm friendly with a couple of them still. And we're connected on LinkedIn, and we're friends on Facebook, a couple of them. And a couple of them I can always reach out to. Hey, I get this scenario. What do you think? And most of the time it gets back to, like, Dave Burke, as a matter of fact, is one of them. He's like,
love him.
You got to detach. If you're taking it too personal, and it's usually right. And it's nice to have that little bit of an outlet. Luckily for me, I think I figured it out. We all have bad days. But are you really having a bad day, or is it a bad few minutes, right? So you have to just be able to adapt and overcome. And those guys, the adaptation when it comes to that 3 minutes of watching that video, good, right? Everything's going wrong, good. This is an opportunity to improve, find a better process. Most of the time, that better process is inside your own head, getting it right, and then resetting and being able to move forward.
Yeah. You mentioned Dave Burke. I'm super excited. July, is that when his book comes out?
Yes, it is July.
Yeah. So I'm really I love his conversations on there. It just, and like you said, so down to earth. Oh, leadership. Now I want you to step up to, and I don't know how it works in your jail, but I'm that mid-level supervisor, that person who's now taken that step, and they've got their peers under them. They're setting the standard. They're setting the culture. Tell me about what your advice for those guys is.
No bigger challenge, I think, than going from being with your friends and coworkers as a peer, and then suddenly now you're the boss, right? And of course, they get to know especially when you're taking over a shift. Now I think we do a pretty good job, because I recognize when I made sergeant, I was suddenly in charge of my friends, which was not an easy transition. Right. So we make sure that anybody being promoted to rank a sergeant goes to a different shift, and they get to start over with a fresh slate, basically.
Yeah.
But that's the hardest part, separating yourself from the line and recognizing that now you're responsible for everything that line is doing. Nothing saying you can't be friendly. You need to have relationships to be successful in leadership or supervision. You have to know your people. You have to know them pretty well, especially at the line level, because honestly, you're their first responder. If something's going on at home, they're distracted, or they're sick, or somebody in the family's sick, and they're having money troubles. These things, eventually, you get to know their faces. You know something's up. As long as you're treating them right and you have good relationships, you'll be able to identify those things early, be able to react to them, and make sure that they're going to be okay. Because there's nothing more stressful. I'll say nothing more stressful if I'm home and my wife and I have a fight. Thank God we don't fight very often. But I know that I'm distracted until I get that sorted out, because she's my world. My family's my most important thing. So until that's sorted out, I can't concentrate fully on anything else I'm doing. So I'm thinking your staff is probably going to have the same challenges. So truly getting to know your people, especially if you're a new sergeant, I think that's the key. Moving into middle management, if it's some shifts, some places, like my facility, a sergeant runs the shift. Mm-hmm. Historically, my last jail, a lieutenant. In Florida, most of the mid-sized to large jails, it's a lieutenant or a captain. Being able to now lead the leaders, nothing more stressful probably than a junior lieutenant trying to tell a 30-year sergeant, hey, something's wrong with your squad. We need to get this fixed. The paperwork's not right. How come you can't form sentences? I don't understand what's going on. These things you didn't have to deal with because they weren't your sergeant. You were working next to him, right? But being willing to stand up and be that leader, at the same time you can't just do as I say, not as I do. You gotta work with them. But I think the challenge is honestly is keeping good, solid relationships with people. So you know your people and you know their needs, and if you can meet their needs, do it. There is no more frustrating of a situation. I was talking about this at the AJA conference a few weeks ago.
Sure.
For people, when they put requests in or suggestions in or ask for clarification on a policy or it says submit a memo to, even to ask for meritorious gain time for an inmate, and they just don't hear anything back.
Yeah.
When you, as a middle manager or a leader in general, if you get something on your desk that somebody has taken the time to create a document to send up the chain of command, and you can't take the time to respond to them, that is a response, right? And that response looks like a middle finger back at the staff, honestly. And nothing will disenfranchise staff or lower morale faster than people not responding to suggestions. If it's important to them, it should be important to you. And if it's something that just won't work, that's okay. Explain it to them. Call them down to your office or meet them on their post and hey, I have your memo, I have your suggestion. Let's talk about it. Can we afford it? Is it politically feasible? Is it going to work long term? And have them work through it, because nothing. No supervisor wants somebody to come to you with just problems, right? You talked about that earlier. You're on the lieutenant's list. Okay, stop crying about it.
Right.
Come. If you have a problem, identify the problem, come with solutions, and I will help you pick your best solution because it's not going to be my decision.
Yeah.
One of the greatest compliments I received as a lieutenant, Sergeant Todd Dane, retired, still one of the greatest people I ever worked with. He came to me and he said, "LT, can I say something to you?" I said, any day of the week. Because I appreciate the fact that anytime we come to you with a situation, if it's classification versus housing or booking versus the kitchen or whatever, and we come to you with an issue, as long as we come with solutions, you always hear us out. I said, well, why wouldn't I? I'm not here I don't want to make all the decisions. I absolutely don't want to. I want to be the tiebreaker if necessary. That's the worst thing I want to do. I want to be, if I have to make the decisions, then I'm doing something wrong. If I'm not developing people and I'm not making sure that they're able to run their shift or confident enough to make decisions, I shouldn't. Nobody should be that excited to make the decisions all day long. Listen, because you have the same results. If you work for a micromanager or a laissez-faire leader, right? You have the same results. It's called apathy. Your staff don't care at that point because the sergeant's going to come down and tell them what to do anyway. So why should I be proactive? Or he doesn't care enough so why should we care? It's too easy to let them engage them. I remember one of the first articles I wrote for American Jail Association magazine was lowest level leadership. And I would push as many decisions as possible down the chain, not just because I didn't want to, but empowering people to reason through them and make the decisions. And what triggered that, honestly, was one day I was sitting as a, I think it was a captain, and I got a phone call from a warden of a prison.
Okay.
And they were reaching out to me to ask me if it was okay if one of their prisoners wrote letters to one of my inmates. Why is the warden of a prison asking me if an inmate can write, a prisoner can write an inmate? Why can't that decision be made somewhere else? Wait, even in the mailroom, as far as I'm concerned, check to make sure there's no victim issues and no co-defendant issues, and then who cares, right?
Yeah.
Especially the way we've, made everything electronic. We're going to gather intel potentially, so why not let it in? As long as you're not hurting anybody, why not? So I pushed. That was one of my favorite articles I ever wrote, and I live it. I don't need to make all those decisions. I don't want that. I want a culture of people willing to make decisions, willing to lead. And guess what? If something goes wrong, that's on me, right? I mean, that's talk about Jocko, talk about his TED talk that kind of started it all. It's on me. If something goes wrong, it's okay. I'll wear it. And when I went to human resources for those first 4 months there that I was there, I had a meeting with the staff, and I said, listen, whatever goes wrong back here is on me. Whatever we win is on y'all. So don't worry about it. I'll take the brunt of it. And that goes such a long way because when you're used to not, why did this go wrong? And how did this happen? Well, because I let it happen. And you have to be able to be willing to own it. It's so once it clicks in your head, read the books and actually live it a little bit. Once it clicks, it's easy.
It makes life easy. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Your decision is to build and surround yourself with good people so that you don't have to make every decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Henry Ford, I think he was quoted as saying that too. He's like, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm going to surround myself with people that are smarter than me and just let them work because you can't beat it.
You can't. So tell me what's going on with you coming up with the AJA with, what have you got in the works?
So we are getting back to basics. And hopefully soon, actually, our just got notified that some of our internal podcasts are almost ready to come out, and some of the
congratulations
videos. Thank you. It was really we put together 4 of them while we're at the conference. Don't let anybody know. I'm just kidding. So we're going to put them out at least once a month. We're going to try to get our narrative out there a little more active on social media, all the way down to YouTube. And I know we are, as an association, getting back to the basics. That the reason why I fell in love with the American Jail Association was in 2007. I went to a class called Medical and Security Working Together. What a concept, right? And that's not always that easy to do. Luckily for me, my medical director, Christine DeCaney, and I have worked together a long time. She was an LPN when I started as a deputy. I'm sorry, vice versa. She was an LPN and when I was a deputy already. We've gone through the ranks. We've grown up together. Every time I got promoted, she got promoted. The last time was the first time ever that she now gets to work for me, which was a tough adjustment for her. Just kidding. We have such a good relationship. But that first exposure to American Jail Association training was phenomenal. I came back, and that one training affected that part of my career so much because I joke about the medical staff. I love them. Like you love your little sister, right? When they come down to pass medication or you got to deal with a triage situation, protect them, get them out of your hair as fast as you possibly can, but make sure they're safe, and treat them right and engage them. And we do engage medical and mental health and a lot of decisions we make operationally, because why not? It's a different perspective. Worst case scenario, it's maybe it doesn't have anything to do with medical, but somebody's got a different perspective. So engage all your thought leaders that are surrounding you. Because like I said earlier, not every decision has to be yours. But we're getting back to basics. We are getting back to providing world-class training. We're going to make sure we are meeting the needs of the members. I don't think we've ever not met the needs of the members, but I think we're going to double down this year. I'm excited. We're going to talk about online training. We're going to revitalize that online training section on our website. We're creating good content. I got to actually record some content a couple weeks ago, which was the first time I've ever done that. When it comes to for training purposes, it was fun. But we're doing some good stuff, and we're always going to lead the way in legislative stuff. I know the FCC ruling that came out a few months ago has really hurt jails and prisons across the country when it comes to funding. About they cut the
collecting money off of phone calls.
We stood to potentially lose $450,000 a year, which paid for 5 people. Well, if that funding goes away, then I got to find a way to either lose people, which I don't want to do, or get the county to fund them. So we're going to push that legislative initiative to make sure we can try to get the FCC to at least come back to the table and talk about how we can enforce it, or if not, just forget about it. Now, the courts are going to rule on that, and I'm hoping soon. And I believe, based on interactions we've had, I don't think the FCC is going to. They're not going to have hurt feelings if it gets overturned. So it's either way, it's fine. But we need to push it and make sure we don't lose that valuable source of funding, and then also potential long-term intelligence. Because what's the benefit of what prompts a phone company to go out and create technologies that could help identify escape attempts or criminal activity? Why do it if you're not making money? Because they're in the business to make money. We're not there to give free phone calls away.
Right.
It's
and they're not truly free. They're on the taxpayer's dime.
Absolutely right at that point.
Yeah. There's
been a few sheriffs across the country that have said, you know what, if I can't make money off of this to support the inmate programs, then I just don't need phones. No court case has ever come out and said you have to give an inmate phone calls. You don't have to. You have to give them access to people. You can do that in a letter.
Pen and paper.
Absolutely. So we're going to continue to the legislative front and make those pushes and make sure we're paying attention to bills all the time that come out. Even bills that you think would only affect the Bureau of Prisons, eventually trickle down and affect the jail, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, PREA snuck up on us, and people are like, "This will never pass. This will never pass." And guess what? It passed.
Right.
I mean, now we're even paying attention to that. The PREA Resource Center being defunded during the DOJ situation with the current administration. So we've offered some training recently on PREA. PREA's still there. The rule, it's still a law. If you're going to remain compliant, you're going to have to get inspected and you're going to do all those things, but those resources are gone. So we're going to try to fill that void a little bit to offer our insight. Anything that benefits the members specifically, especially in their leadership development. So one of the things I enjoy talking about is our certifications. So I'm a certified jail manager. I was a certified jail officer. Mm-hmm. And when I said in my speech a couple weeks ago, when I saw a job advertisement in Texas for a jail administrator position that required a bachelor's degree, but preferred somebody with a master's degree or an American Jail Association certified jail manager, I knew that credential meant something. So when they held it to the same level as a master's degree, that's important. So credentialing is such a great way to help professionalize yourself, work towards yourself. I mean, it's not an easy credential to get. It's not a gimme. And I'm 28 years in at this point. July 7th will be my 28th year So I've been doing this a long time. So I'm still trying to work on things.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is, those accreditations, I did them through the ACA when I first started. And that you do learn a lot. And it sets you up for promotions. It sets you up for success because you can go into the house and you can learn from old Bob there in the back, and he'll teach you a few things. But when you want to look outside of that housing unit and you want to know how jails and prisons and the system runs, you've got to reach out farther. So
absolutely. Again,
that's great.
Back into the case law and the why behind the reasons why we do things. It really opens your eyes, and it's going to help you later on when you're answering grievances too. So
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's something I noticed traveling the country and teaching is the lack of case law, and we've really got to get that back in our training. A lot of officers are out there working and have no idea why they're doing what they're doing,
yep.
and the repercussions of it is
so
the other thing.
Locally, we hosted a few months ago, the American Jail Association. My agency hosted a classification course. It wasn't the traditional classification course that we offered. It was modified, and one of the things we did do was we added a legal section. Now, I took full advantage of the fact that our staff attorney is also the attorney for the board of directors for the American Jail Association. So I asked her if she'd offer some background and some insight into the why behind what we're doing, and she did a great job. It turned into a 2-hour basic of legal section before the classification course kicked off, and it really set the tone. It was really beneficial, and she did a great job. But you're absolutely right. It's too easy nowadays, especially with the easy ability to do the research. We have all this opportunity with AI. I know I don't recommend you just go write reports or start making crazy ideas with AI and submitting them. You have to use it as a tool. You got to take full advantage. You have to vet the information, but you can ask ChatGPT to do a lot of stuff, to include give me some case law that might help here, and it'll do a good job of it. You got to vet it all. You got to make sure it's accurate, but it'll really get you going.
Have you used Notebook LM yet? Oh, I got into that a few weeks ago. You just bring in, you point it to all these PDFs and all these things, and then ask it questions based on everything you've uploaded to it. It's pretty cool.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. But same as every other AI, you got to go back through it and make sure that it's giving you good information. But yeah. So, I'll put all this stuff in the underneath in the info section, but if people want more information on certification, joining the AJAA and that type of stuff, where can they go?
So just go to ajaa.org. The website is full of information, and if you can't find it for some reason, I will answer email almost 24 hours a day. So you can email me, SeanK@ajaa.org, SeanK@ajaa.org. I have no problem sharing that. I love engaging, especially if you're an AJA member. Jump on iConnect. iConnect is a great opportunity to get a bunch of questions answered for you. It's basically a listserv, but it's basically live. People asking questions and providing good information. But yeah, the website is definitely the best starting point. Any questions? Anybody on the board of directors is more than willing to answer questions. Anybody at headquarters staff, all their emails are on the website too. Anybody, and if you just want to follow up and send me an email too, I'll be glad to help push your question along. I'll probably have a lot of answers for you, but the nuanced stuff, the headquarters staff is going to be. I would hope that I wouldn't misspeak. I prefer to get the right information out there first, but they do such a good job. But I'd be happy to engage with anybody that's listening to further their career in any way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm super excited to have you on here. I've been wanting to meet you for a while. Great conversation. I knew it would be. And I appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, it was a great time, and I'll be happy to come back anytime.
We'll do that. Have a good day.
Thank you, too.
Hey, before we go, I'd like to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a company I've been working closely with for years. I'm proud to be a part of this innovative team that's developed the best real-time locating system on the market today for your jail or prison. Omni's PREA-compliant real-time monitoring technology is the very best way to track and record your inmates' locations, their movements, their interactions throughout every square inch of your correctional facility. Imagine getting an alarm the second an escape happens, or an alert that lets you know when an inmate's heart rate drops below a set level. To learn more about Omni, go to www.omnirtls.com. That's omnirtls.com. Or you can click on today's show notes to get in the information guide. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a powerful tool specifically designed for the modern correctional professional. If you haven't done so, please take a moment to like my podcast, or better yet, hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified when the next episode comes out. Thanks for listening, and let's be safe out there. If you enjoy these podcasts, the best way to support the Prisoner Officer Podcast is to share these episodes with your friends or family on social media. Let me invite you to visit www.theprisonofficer.com. If you haven't already, check out the Prison Officer Podcast on Facebook and click that little follow button. Or leave us a message, or better yet, leave us a review. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, Google, or Spotify, please click the subscribe button. Till next time, I'm Mike Cantrell. Watch your back, and please take care of each other out there behind those walls.